Imagine being a city bus driver. And here's the catch. Instead of just checking your mirrors for traffic, keeping an eye on the road, you have to actually strap on a heavy bulletproof vest and nervously scan the sky for fiber optic assassination
Which
drones.
is just a terrifying concept.
It really is. But that is the literal daily commute right now in Kherson. Welcome to the Clara Horatio Daily World Brief, available at clarahoratio.com. Today, we're providing an in-depth analysis of a world that is currently operating under immense strain.
We're looking at systems buckling, really.
Right, so we're going to examine a major multi-front escalation in the Middle East. We'll look at a wave of fragile and honestly fiercely contested elections around the globe and bring you stories of profound human resilience under extreme pressure. And as always, we are separating the verified physical evidence from the political rhetoric to give you the essential context.
Because the situation in the Middle East right now really requires us to look at the mechanical facts of what is happening on the ground. We have entered a demonstrably new phase here.
Yeah, the lines are shifting rapidly.
They are. In Lebanon, Israeli troops have pushed beyond the Litani River for the first time in 26 years. And they've captured Beaufort Castle.
The medieval fortress.
Yeah, it's a 900-year-old fortress. But its relevance isn't just historical. It sits on a highly strategic ridge that basically commands a view of the entire surrounding valley. So we are now seeing verified footage of Israeli and Golani Brigade flags flying over that specific area.
And at the same time, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered strikes on the southern Beirut suburbs of Dahi.
Right. And Israel states this is a direct response to Hezbollah violating the terms of the April ceasefire that the U.S. brokered.
And you have U.S. officials, notably Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who are, trying to mediate a step-by-step de-escalation there. But if you pull back and look at the broader regional picture, the shadow war between the United States and Iran it's stepped entirely out of the shadows.
It's direct confrontation now.
Yes, these two nations are trading direct conventional military blows. The U.S. Central Command recently launched what they termed self-defense strikes against Iranian radar and drone control sites in Garuk and Qashm.
And the response to that was immediate. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps targeted an airbase utilized by U.S. forces in Kuwait.
Which forced a huge diplomatic issue, right?
Oh, absolutely. Kuwaiti air defense systems had to actively intercept hostile missiles and drones over their own territory, which prompted their foreign ministry to issue a very strong condemnation of the Iranian actions. And this is the moment where you really have to look past the political statements coming from podiums and examine the physical evidence.
Because the messaging is very disconnected from the reality.
Very much so.
Yeah.
The White House has been signaling publicly that the Iranian military is severely degraded, basically implying it's almost wiped out.
Well, let me stop you there, because the satellite imagery paints a completely different reality. If you look at the analysis from BBC Verify, Iran has successfully damaged 20 U.S. military sites across 8 different countries since the start of this conflict.
20 sites.
Yeah, and they aren't just hitting empty runways or, storage sheds. They are hitting incredibly expensive critical infrastructure. We are talking about state-of-the-art THAAD anti-ballistic missile batteries in the UAE and Jordan.
So to understand the weight of that, you have to know what a THAAD system actually is.
Right.
It stands for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. And you should think of it not just as a missile launcher, but as the absolute crown jewel of the U.S. regional defense network. It's designed to shoot down incoming ballistic threats from space.
From space?
Yeah, and they cost about $1 billion each to manufacture. The U.S. only operates 8 of them globally.
Wow.
Just 8. And they require a crew of 100 highly trained troops just to operate a single battery. The interceptor missiles alone, just the ammunition, cost over $12 million per round.
So losing even one of these, let alone multiple, is a massive strategic blow. Replacing them is neither quick nor cheap. And BBC Verify also noted they hit an E-3 Sentry surveillance plane in Saudi Arabia,
which carries a replacement cost of around $700 million.
It really changes how you have to view Iranian military strategy here, because early in the conflict, their approach looked like overwhelming shotgun blasts.
Right.
Sending massive waves of munitions, hoping to overwhelm the defense systems purely by volume.
Right, the swarm tactic.
Yeah. But now, looking at the satellite data, it feels much more like sniper fire. They are using precise directed drone salvos, they're conserving their ammunition, and specifically hunting these billion-dollar high-value targets.
That tactical shift going from volume to precision is severe. And that evolution makes Donald Trump's recent public statement on Truth Social, where he basically told his critics to just sit back and relax, very difficult to reconcile with the reality on the ground.
To say the least.
I mean, the Pentagon estimates the cost of Operation Epic Fury, which is the U.S. military response, at $29 billion.
Hmm.
And on top of that financial cost, U.S. air defense stocks are being dangerously depleted.
Yet somehow the diplomatic channels are still open. Pakistan is currently acting as a mediator between the U.S. and Iran. Trump is pushing for a 60-day cessation of violence, but he's requesting very specific edits to the deal. He wants guarantees regarding the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, which you have to remember is a critical choke point for global oil shipments.
A huge portion of the world's oil goes through there.
Exactly. And he also wants the removal of highly enriched uranium from Iran.
While Iran's chief negotiator, meanwhile, insists that no deal will happen unless Iranian rights are secured. And reportedly, a non-negotiable part of that is the release of billions in frozen assets. So the contrast is stark. You have the quiet, undeniable reality of satellite damage assessments showing a highly capable, precise Iranian strike force. And that's running parallel to these loud public negotiation tactics from both sides trying to claim leverage.
But military hardware isn't the only way regimes are attempting to secure or project power right now. You're seeing this exact same stress test happening at the ballot box. Moving to the political battlefields, we are looking at a wave of global elections where the basic mechanics of voting they're just hopelessly entangled with violence and state control.
Ethiopia is a prime example of this right now. They are currently holding a general election where Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is widely expected to maintain his grip on power. The conditions on the ground, however, are heavily fractured. I mean, the entire northern region of Tigray is completely excluded from the vote.
And Tigray is home to 6 million people. To just carve out a population that size from a national election is staggering.
It really stems from unresolved tensions following a 2022 peace deal that was supposed to end a brutal civil war there. The mechanical infrastructure to hold an election simply doesn't exist safely in that region. Furthermore, you have violent insurgencies led by Fano militias in the Amhara region and the Oromo Liberation Army in Oromia, who are actively fighting government forces.
Yet the government says everything is fine.
Yeah, the Ethiopian government claims 97% of these areas are ready for elections. But opposition groups dispute this entirely. They state that setting up polling stations or even campaigning safely is functionally impossible.
Over in South America, Colombia is bracing for a highly tense presidential runoff scheduled for June 21st. And it is a stark ideological split. On one side, you have the right-wing candidate Abelardo de la Espriella, who openly models his political persona on Donald Trump and El Salvador's Nayib Bukele, really advocating for an iron fist approach.
Right.
And he is running against the leftist senator Ivan Cepeda. But what complicates this significantly is the behavior of Colombia's current president, Gustavo Petro. Petro, who endorsed Cepeda, is publicly claiming the preliminary count was plagued by irregularities and that hundreds of thousands of votes were artificially added.
Did he offer any proof?
No. To be clear, Petro has made these explosive claims without providing any supporting evidence whatsoever, while the official electoral authorities maintain the vote proceeded completely normally.
Then you have to look at states where the opposition isn't just arguing over ballot counts, but they are facing extreme lethal repression. In Mozambique, the Anamola opposition party reports that 56 of its members have been assassinated by state-sponsored death squads following a disputed October election.
56 people.
Yes. Civil society groups are directly accusing the ruling Frelimo party of deploying these squads to spread terror and physically destroy political opposition. And similarly, in Nicaragua, the authoritarian regime of Daniel Ortega recently confirmed the death of indigenous leader Brooklyn Rivera.
He had been missing for a while, hadn't he?
3 years. He died in a hospital under state custody after 3 years of arbitrary detention. The government waited 15 hours to even announce his death, and, as of now, they are refusing to release his body to his family.
It really makes you wonder, at what point do we just stop calling these things elections? When an event occurs, but entire regions of millions of people are legally excluded, like in Ethiopia, or the political opposition is being systematically assassinated in the streets, like in Mozambique, the international community has to face a very grounded philosophical question about democratic legitimacy.
The threshold for what constitutes an election is clearly being manipulated. International observers are increasingly forced to evaluate whether the mechanics of voting in these countries are merely providing a thin veneer of legality for straightforward authoritarian control.
Before we move on to how these massive geopolitical pressures ultimately fall on the shoulders of everyday citizens, a quick reminder that you can find more independent, free thinking daily news over at clarineratio.com. We also have our brain candy rabbit holes for when you want slower, deeper context on the headlines, alongside a great library of classic audiobooks.
So, taking the focus from the high-level political struggles down to the ground level, we need to look at how these macro events violently intersect with working-class survival. I want to return to the situation in the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson that you mentioned earlier.
The bus drivers.
Yes, public transport workers there are facing a daily reality that is honestly hard to comprehend. Russian operators are actively hunting municipal buses and trolleybuses using drones.
And these aren't just the standard radio-controlled drones we have seen throughout the conflict. They are using fiber optic cables. The drone literally spools out a physical fiber optic thread as it flies.
It's tethered.
Exactly. Because they don't rely on radio frequencies to transmit their video feed or receive commands, they are completely immune to electronic jamming.
That is the terrifying innovation here. The standard Shuka drone detectors that were issued to the bus drivers, which scan for radio frequencies to warn them of incoming threats, they are completely useless against a physical cable.
So you have municipal bus drivers in Kherson putting on bulletproof vests every single morning, knowing they might be specifically targeted just so they can get local residents to pharmacies and hospitals. They are absorbing the frontline risk of a geopolitical war just by doing their civic jobs.
And a similar theme of working-class vulnerability is evident in Shaanxi, China, following a catastrophic blast at the Lushanyu coal mine that killed 82 people.
Such a massive loss of life.
It is, and the initial investigation points to severe, intentional systemic failures. The mine operators, the Tongzhou Group, were allegedly utilizing secret unmapped tunnels. They were sending unregistered workers deep underground.
And the most chilling detail to me is that the workers were reportedly instructed to leave their mandatory tracking devices behind. The management wanted to hide the fact that they were illegally mining unapproved coal seams. So when the blast happened, rescuers had absolutely no idea who was down there or where to even look.
It's horrific.
There is a tragic commonality between those Ukrainian bus drivers and the Chinese coal miners. When safety systems fail, or when they are intentionally bypassed by management to increase profit margins, the ultimate risk is never absorbed by the state or the corporation. It is always absorbed by the individual worker who simply has no other economic choice but to show up for their shift.
And China is pushing massively for green energy. They're building vast solar and wind farms. But coal remains what they call their ballast stone for energy security. It is the reliable baseline that keeps the grid running. And the true cost of that ballast stone is paid for by unregistered workers in places like Shaanxi. The human toll of these systemic failures leaves scars that last for generations. We are seeing two profound stories today of lingering grief and the desperate search for historical truth. In Mumbai, the family of Javed Ali is still waiting for answers a full year after Air India flight AI-171 crashed, killing him, his wife, and their 2 children.
Because the final investigation report has yet to be released, the family speaks of living in a paralyzing limbo. They're dealing with vague, bureaucratic responses from aviation officials, and they've spoken about the severe physical toll the grief is taking on Javed's mother. She's just waiting for someone to explain the mechanical failure that destroyed her family.
And then on a much larger historical scale, the Grammy-winning director Miji Alabai recently released a documentary uncovering the suppressed horrors of the Biafran War in Nigeria.
Which is a very painful chapter.
This conflict lasted from 1967 to 1970 and resulted in up to 3 million deaths. A vast majority of those deaths were due to a federal blockade that caused intentional mass starvation.
And Alibai's own grandfather was a commander in the Federal Army during that war. In the documentary, his grandfather admits on camera that during the conflict, unbeknownst to him at the time, he actually consumed human flesh served by villagers in occupied territory.
It's a staggering, brutal admission.
It is. But it's a necessary confrontation with a history that was incredibly not even formally taught in Nigerian schools for over a decade. They just tried to erase it.
The vulnerability of our political and economic systems is often mirrored by the vulnerability of our environmental and cultural systems, too. In the Caribbean, agricultural producers are facing a severe climate-driven crisis. Jamaica is experiencing a massive shortage of Scotch bonnet peppers following the devastation of Hurricanes Melissa and Beryl.
Now, if you know Caribbean cuisine, you know the Scotch bonnet pepper is the absolute foundation of authentic hot sauce. It is culturally vital. But the plant is highly susceptible to heavy rain and specific types of fungus that thrive after massive storms. Following those hurricanes, the price of these peppers surged tenfold.
10 times the normal price.
Yeah, so farmers who desperately need reliable income are abandoning the peppers entirely and switching to hardier crops like sweet potatoes. I kind of look at the Scotch bonnet pepper as a canary in the coal mine for climate change. It shows you how warming oceans and extreme weather don't just erode coastlines or knock out power grids, they can literally alter the fundamental flavor profile of a culture's defining cuisine.
Though manufacturers like Walker's Wood are trying to adapt, they are actually funding genetics research to try and create a more resilient strain of the yellow Scotch bonnet that can withstand these new weather patterns. But the global supply chain for that authentic flavor remains incredibly fragile.
Yeah, that's a tough situation.
Moving to other global developments today, health authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo have confirmed that 5 patients have successfully recovered from the Bundibugyo species of Ebola. This is a rare and dangerous strain, and these recoveries are providing a much-needed boost to morale among the frontline medical workers handling the outbreak.
Meanwhile, in Japan, Tokyo's commercial Shibuya district has instituted on-the-spot fines of 2,000 yen for littering. They are dealing with a massive influx of foreign visitors, over 42 million last year, and the urban infrastructure is visibly straining under the pressure of that tourism boom.
And in Europe, the Polish coach operator, Flixbus, has controversially revived the bus route numbered 666. The route travels to the seaside resort of Hell. The company brushed past long-standing complaints from religious conservative groups who oppose the marketing joke.
And finally, in India, commercial LPG gas prices have been hiked for the third consecutive time, putting intense financial pressure on the restaurant industry, all while Royal Challengers Bengaluru secured the IPL cricket title.
So if we look at the core pattern running through today's briefing, we are witnessing systems duckling and the chaotic scramble to reinforce them. The infrastructure the world relies on is being severely stress-tested from every conceivable angle.
You see it with the U.S. military having to rapidly rethink billion-dollar air defense networks against precise, evolving drone salvos. You see it with Jamaican farmers racing to genetically breed weather-resistant crops just to save their cultural exports. Or even just Ukrainian bus drivers navigating streets hunted by unjammable fiber optic technology. Survival in this current era requires constant, rapid, and often incredibly painful adaptation.
And for those looking to understand the deeper historical context of these geopolitical pressure cookers, I highly recommend exploring the debate candy section on the Clarina Ratio website. It offers the slower, measured context necessary to truly understand how we arrived at this fragile moment.
I want to leave you with a thought regarding that Nigerian documentary and the family waiting in Mumbai for the Air India crash report. Official reports, government narratives, state curriculums, they often try to neatly package tragedies. They want to file away the messy, painful realities to protect an institution's image. But the human need for truth, even when it involves facing the absolute darkest actions of our own ancestors, or waiting years for an airline to finally explain a mechanical failure, is often the only real path to closure. Without the truth, the wound never heals. Thank you for joining the conversation today. Be sure to visit clarinoratio.com for more daily world briefs, brain candy rabbit holes, and classic audiobooks.